This morning, we have been in a series through the last several weeks that we've titled Principles Over Privilege. And we focused primarily on the principles found in what we know as the Ten Commandments from Exodus chapter 20. But last week we veered from Exodus 20 and we talked about the principle of being grateful, right? So we did that last week. Today we're going to go back to Exodus 20 and the Ten Commandments and look at the principle of honoring others. So it's Exodus 20, verse 12 is what we're looking at. And you know it. It is honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Exodus 20, verse 12. Now, some translations use the word respect in place of honor, and so I'm going to be using honor and respect interchangeably through the message here because they're very, very similar. In fact, each word is used in the definition of the other word when you look it up. So the principle here is to be a person who shows honor and respect for others. So before we dig deeper into the principle found here and what this verse means for us today, I want to first cover what it does not mean. Because we have a tendency as human beings over time to lose sight of the meaning of a verse or a passage of Scripture because of the way we use it in our lives and because of the way it gets used in our culture. And that's one of the things I'm always trying to unwrap as we go through any message. It's what we've come to believe or how we've come to act in our Christian walk that's not truly in line with the intent of a particular passage in the Bible, because our culture has kind of taken us in a little bit different path. Often it's very, very subtle, but other times it can become significant. So it's kind of like the problem we talked about with the Pharisees and the other religious leaders in Jesus' day regarding the Sabbath, right? Over time, they added their own thoughts, their own commentary to what it was to keep the Sabbath day holy. And eventually the people began to act more according to those thoughts and comments rather than in accordance with what Scripture actually says. So so we talked about that when we looked at the Sabbath day of rest. The Pharisees turned it into a day of burdensome laws for people to follow and rules that went far beyond what God had intended. And basically the people lost a sense of how to make it a day of rest, right? Without worrying about all the things they weren't supposed to do that day. And we've done the same thing. I mean, we've taken attending church. If you look across our landscape and culture, we've made attending church such an ordeal and added so many components to it that it becomes a day of work for everybody rather than the day of rest that God intended. I cannot tell you, especially in ministry, how many times, I sat there and thought about this day that's supposed to be a day of rest. And I understand that your day of rest doesn't have to be Sunday. It could be another day. There's people who have to work on Sundays and who we want working on Sundays, policemen, firemen, people like that. So it's not that, but it's just the idea that here's a day that we say is a day of rest, but we run people ragged. It just doesn't make sense. So culturally, right, things change and we lose sight of what it's all about. So with that said, what is this commandment not about? Well, it's not written to young children. It's not about a passage that's trying to teach young children how to behave. That's not what it is. It's a commandment for adults, right? Adult children, basically. So what does that mean? Well, it's obviously it's good to teach the commandments to our children, and we're even admonished to do so in Scripture, like Deuteronomy 6. But they are children, and these things are not written for them. For instance, not coveting your neighbor's wife is not something that a child needs to concern themselves with, right? It's not something they need to be worried about. So what happens with our verse for today is that because it says something about father and mother, we automatically see it as written to young children. In the way young children learn these commandments best is by seeing them lived out in the adults in their lives. So it's written to adult children, not young children. So it's not written to children. Second thing it's not about obedience or demands. So this is not about obeying your parents. So if you've quoted this to your children or grandchildren to guilt them into doing something, go apologize to them and explain the real purpose and meaning of the verse, okay? That's what we need to do. Sometimes in Christian homes, we get on a "you will obey me" kick. I've been there, okay? It's not a good thing for a healthy long-term relationship with your kids. And again, this verse isn't written to children in the home. It's written for adult children. Also, you can't demand. It's not a demanding thing. You can't demand honor and respect. It just doesn't work that way, right? It's like the boss of a small company, right, who was complaining during a staff meeting that people didn't respect him enough. He's the boss. And so trying to change the attitude in the office, he had an idea. He brought him a sign to put on his door. It said, "I'm the boss," right? I am the boss. Trying to get his point across. Till one of his workers had a bright idea and put a little Post-it note on there that said, "Your wife called. She wants her sign back." So don't want to be like that. It's not a thing you can demand that people give you without being a dictator. We've talked about that principle before. And it's also not about lost people. I mention this because too many times we think that every person should automatically see the value in a principle like this and live it out. So the question comes, can those who are not believers have respect and show honor towards others? Well, absolutely they can. That's not the issue. But expecting a culture that is veered away from God to live this out is not realistic, aside from a God intervention. So I mention this just for the purpose of setting realistic expectations for us. This is not something that everybody's going to automatically see the value in. Oh, I should show honor and respect because the Bible says to. It just doesn't work that way. Another thing it's not a personal individual promise of a long life. And I'll explain this more in a minute, but I'll just say here that there are good people who honored and respected their parents as well as other people who have not lived a long life. So we need to stop trying to tie this verse to living long. And again, I'll explain more in a minute what it's really about. But it's not a fountain of youth kind of an idea. Well, if you'll just do this, you'll live to be 110. That's not how that works either. And then finally, it's not a weapon, right? Sometimes when we learn a biblical principle, we weaponize it to set other people straight. We think about the people who aren't doing this well, and we need to let them know about it, right? And we end up making it out to be a weapon. Just simply don't do that, right? Don't take this and beat other people up with it. That's not the point. So with the what it's not out of the way, let's get down to what this verse is actually about. Before we do that, we'll look at just a couple of, really just one definition. What does it mean to honor and respect others? What does that mean? I pulled up from Webster's Dictionary of 1828, which you know is my favorite dictionary to pull definitions from. Honor, to revere, to respect, to treat with deference and submission, and perform relative duties to. A second description, to reverence, to manifest the highest veneration for, in words and actions, to entertain the most exalted thoughts of, to worship, to adore. When you honor and respect somebody, you believe the best about them, not the worst, right? You revere them, you honor them, you hold them in high esteem. That's what to honor and respect means. So, getting down to business, what the commandment is. It is a covenant community commandment. So again, this is not so much about the individual family, it's about the community. And not just any community, but a covenant community. A community that's in a covenant relationship with a holy God. So we honor and respect others because we respect the Lord, right? That's why. We respect him and we want to honor him, so we honor and respect others. And back to the fact that this is not a promise of individual long life. It's a promise for community long life, right? If you will honor and respect those in authority, whether it's your mother or your father, or whoever it is that God places in authority over you, if you have honor and respect coming forth from you as a community, if that is the value that is held, your community will be a long-lasting community. That's the promise. That's the promise of long life, right? And I think you could, I didn't do this for the purpose of this message, but I think you could look back through our history. I think you could find lots of examples where honor and respect have been given, even in cases maybe where it wasn't so much deserved, but we did show a sense of honor and respect. And you can see that eroding now. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But you can see a community that honors and respects is a community that can sustain itself over time. So that's one of the things this commandment is about. It's also about how we treat all people, again, not just our mother and father. I mean, mother and father is used in the verse, but it goes well beyond that. It's about honoring and respecting others, period, especially those in authority over us. This principle is about the stability of the family unit, which in turn is about the stability of our entire society, back to what I just explained a second ago. And again, this is one reason why what's happening in our nation right now is so troubling. One reason, there's many, but this is one. It's not that we haven't had disrespectful people living in America before. We've always had disrespectful, dishonorable people, right? They've always been among us. There is just a greater sense now of overall more widespread disrespect for one another than we've ever seen. Here are some of the headlines from just this weekend that point to this. In Los Angeles, thieves storm Home Depot, take crowbars as cops fear more looting. Another California story, 80 looters in ski masks storm a California Nordstrom store. Another one from the San Francisco area, Lululemon stores across the Bay Area have been hit by bands of thieves recently. And then the Wisconsin story in Waukesha, Wisconsin, the Christmas parade where the SUV mowed down the crowd, killing 6 and wounding 40 people. Each of these points to a tremendous loss of a sense of honor and respect for other people, for the property of other people, and for the lives of other people. There's just a blatant disregard for human life and property. So as Christians, we've got to continue to set the example for how to be people of honor and respect. How to treat people with honor and respect. And I know that committed Christians are not the people committing these crimes. I understand that. So I'm not saying that we have to do better in that sense, but I'm saying we could do better in the little things in life, the little things that show honor and respect. Those things that if not paid attention to end up becoming bigger things. That's what we can do. So what can we do specifically and practically to treat others with honor and respect and set an example showing others how to treat people with honor and respect? What can we do? Well, I want to share with you 15 specific things. 15-point sermon. You haven't heard one of those in a while, have you? It's not that way. But I've got 15 things that you and I can do that can make a difference in the lives of others. Now, for those who end up watching this via video, I'll have these things listed somewhere in the description or the comments so that you don't have to try to write all this stuff down. The first thing is to treat yourself with respect, right? You've got to, I say this all the time, if you want to lead others well, you've got to lead yourself well first. It's the same with respect, right? You've got to be able to respect yourself. If you don't respect yourself, one, other people aren't going to respect you, and two, you're not going to be able to be respectful towards others. So treat yourself with respect. Being able to do things like say no, setting boundaries in your life, those things are things that I hope people understand respect for yourself in particular. So that's number one. Number two is live the principle of honor and respect as a core value in your life. So core values are things that are so important to you that it's the things that often drive the decisions you make, right? Values like if you value other people's property, you're not going to steal, right? That decision's made. If you have an opportunity to steal, you're not going to do it because the decision's already made because of the core value that you hold. So have that core value to honor and respect others. Number 3, put yourself in other people's shoes. That's called empathy. Try to see things from the other person's perspective. That's what that means, you know. We don't always completely get where somebody's coming from until we can think about, well, if I were them, how would I see this? That helps a whole bunch in giving honor and respect to others. Number 4 is find common ground. Find common ground with others. Don't discriminate, right? Treat people equally based on your common ground. No matter who they are, where they're from, or what they believe, there's always some common ground to bring us together. Number 5, we say this one all the time, don't judge people, right? Don't judge people. You don't know what circumstances have brought them to where they are in life. And even though they're not where you are, they may be far beyond where they were a year or two ago, right? So let's not judge people because of where they are. And number 6, lift others up. In other words, don't put people down. Right? Lift them up. Don't ever try to make yourself look good by making someone else look bad. In the working world that I live in, we talk about don't throw people under the bus, right? And what that means is lift them up. Don't put them down. Don't look for opportunities to make yourself look good by making somebody else look bad. Number 7, and you know this one, it's the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Pretty simple. And part of the deal here is that people will mirror the behavior that they're shown. So if you treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect, right? So it's treat others the way you wish to be treated. Number 8, support people in making their own decisions. In other words, don't try to be controlling of people, but help them to make a way to move forward. Just because you don't like their decision or you wouldn't make that same decision doesn't mean it's a bad decision. I've had to learn this lesson. I think all my decisions are the best decisions, right? Because when I make a firm decision, you guys know I'm very flexible, right? But when I make a firm decision, I've given it a tremendous amount of thought. I've thought about every potential outcome based on that decision. And so when I make the decision, it's a firm decision. But just because somebody else would make a different decision doesn't necessarily make them wrong, right? So we got to be careful. Allow people to make their own decisions. Support them. Number 9, encourage other people's input and opinion. That's a way to show respect, right? Especially in a group of people. I tell people that I work with in groups, I'll say, make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to be heard. Even if you have to call their name and say, what thoughts do you have? You see, that's a way to show respect, because there's people like me and some of you who won't offer up an opinion right away necessarily. We might kind of just stay quiet and keep to ourselves unless specifically asked. If specifically asked, we'll give our opinion. But you kind of like to be asked rather than just throw it out there. So I say always give people an opportunity to express their opinion, to give their input. Number 10, respect boundaries. Right? Don't try to pressure people into things that they don't want to do. Boy, I've seen that happen a lot in church life. We'll just leave it at that. Number 11 is listen. Listen to people. Really listen and respond to what they're saying, right? Not what you want to say next, but respond to what they're saying. Don't try to be somebody who has to do all the talking. Number 12, acknowledge when you're wrong. We're all wrong sometimes. Don't try to, what we call back home, crawfish out of stuff, right? Backpedal. Show people the respect they deserve and admit when you made a mistake. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Own up to it. Number 13, show gratitude. Talked about this last week. When someone does something for you, say please or thank you. They've no matter who they are, what they've done, they've taken a little bit of the time out of their life, right, to do something for you. Show some gratitude. That helps to honor and respect a person. Number 14, don't waste people's time, right? And what I mean by that is don't keep somebody just waiting forever and not letting them know that maybe you're running late for the appointment. At least give them a heads up. Let them know, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna be late. Don't make a person sit around waiting on you. That's one way to show respect. Don't waste somebody's time, in a situation where you're there for a purpose, talking about everything but that purpose. Right? Again, respect people's time. I always try to be respectful of people's time. Number 15, don't talk about people behind their back. Now, I always took the saying, the saying, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I used to say that growing up. I thought it was, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it in front of their face, say it behind their back. That's not good. I don't recommend that. I'm just saying that's what it seemed like how life was, right? Growing up. So don't talk about people behind their back. It's not only disrespectful, but none of us like it when people do that to us. Those are 15 pretty simple, straightforward, practical ways to show other people honor and respect. And let's face it, some of those we could all use a little work on, right? In doing a little bit better job in helping others to see what it really means to show respect. One more important note to all of this. Don't wait until someone has passed to show them honor and respect. Don't be like the guy who was out on the golf course one day with his boss, and as they stepped up to the second hole tee box, they saw a funeral procession passing by. The younger man paused, took off his hat, bowed his head. His older boss, seeing this, told the man how greatly impressed he was by the level of respect that he showed to someone who had passed. The younger man said, well, it's the least that I could do. After all, we were married 35 years. Don't be like that guy, right? Also, remember that respect is a two-way street. Like I mentioned already, you have to give it in order to get it. And I don't know of a story from the Bible that better illustrates this principle than the story of David's actions towards King Saul. Saul had been after David. He was jealous of David. He was trying to kill him. There's one part in the story where David has an opportunity to kill Saul instead of letting Saul kill him. And he takes Saul's spear to prove what he could have done because Saul was asleep at the moment. But David doesn't kill him because of his respect for Saul's position as God's anointed king of Israel. And afterwards, Saul and David have this exchange as recorded in 1 Samuel 26, verses 21 through 25. Then Saul confessed, I have sinned. Come back home, my son, and I will no longer try to harm you, for you valued my life today. I have been a fool and very, very wrong. Here's your spear, O king, David replied. Let one of your young men come over and get it. The Lord gives his own reward for doing good and for being loyal. And I refused to kill you, even when the Lord placed you in my power, for you are the Lord's anointed one. Now may the Lord value my life, even as I have valued yours today. May he rescue me from all my troubles. And Saul said to David, blessings on you, my son David. You will do many heroic deeds, and you will surely succeed. Then David went away, and Saul returned home. It's a great example in carrying out much of what we've talked about today, showing honor and respect, especially in terms of valuing others in that way, even when someone has not necessarily done so towards us. So honor your father, honor your mother, honor your children, your neighbor, your coworkers. In fact, everybody with whom you come into contact. And by doing so, set an example, and more importantly, show honor and respect for the awesome God that we serve.